if you give me the money, you can do certain things. And now it's slightly different. I mean, there are, there's looks at how do we create, I suppose, GIs? How do we create Irish whiskey to make sure it's always Irish whiskey, that it doesn't be taken over by someone else? I picked up a bottle the other day. I mean, random, but what it cost me, 25 quid or something. A wee half bottle. Thompson's and Newry, Scotch.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Thompson's of Newry, Scotch. Is it Scotch though? The question that I think it is Irish whiskey made here and labelled Scotch.
And one thing, Mark, my co-presenter, and it was a huge relief. I mean, Mark was loads of fun.
Mark Thompson's good.
Yeah, I have a lot of love for Mark, and he's so enthusiastic about that Ulster to Scotland tide, as it were, and how things have changed. But he also, there's that one scene which I wasn't allowed to go to because of COVID, where they interviewed Mark, where he has all the little mirrors and knickknacks, and he points out how many brands in Belfast had sister companies in Glasgow, and again, like, whether that be Watts out in Derry into Scotland or back and forth, and this strange, I mean, Dunville's own Bladnoch distillery in Galloway. There is this weird blurred space that did go on, and you had Dunville Scotch, as right along. But then you also had, like, for instance, the distillery we're tasting tonight, or the David's crack at it, Connswater. Connswater was part of, of course, DCL, Distillers Company Limited, and the company that became Diageo much later on was run by a very ruthless, very visionary man named William Ross, who really was the driving force of the success of the Scotch whisky industry. He understood hard business. He was extremely ruthless. He bought places to close them down. But as one of his several strokes, he bought the largest column still concern in this part of the world, 2 in Belfast, 1 in Derry, and shut them down just to essentially prevent the possibility of a competitive Irish blended category.
It's like Rangers and Celtic in the football buying all of the best players in the rest of the league to ensure that they always win.
Yeah. And what happened was, and he was quite candid about it, but what's interesting is that DCL absorbed all this Connswater stock, all this grain whiskey from Belfast, ended up in Hague. And all these various prominent Scotch blends, because they were businessmen. They were and especially this is post partition. They're still in the UK, so it's perfectly legal. There's no regulation stopping one or the other. It's one industry. It's one business. We've closed 3 massive Ulster column stills down. Let's take that grain whiskey, shovel it into our big blends, and we've doubled our capacity because the malt is such a small portion anyway.
There was talk of, there was the talk of the lads working in Edinburgh, drinking, and the lads working in Edinburgh were Irish migrants, and it's those lads drinking that Hague, going, "This is familiar. This is a bit familiar," and. But I do. I mean, I think there's so much to touch on. I mean, Watts. You talked to again. Watts, quite specifically on the bottle, Scotch.
Yeah.
Produced up in Derry, Scotch.
And there's that weird. Again, I mean, even the term Scotch is an American term, as you know yourself. Scotch. Nobody in the history of Scotland called the stuff Scotch. They call it whiskey. And it feeds backwards in this kind of like sound loop from America, and then suddenly you have again the Casablanca crew talking about Scotch, and it's this debonair film noir kind of drink, and then suddenly you have Irish Scotch or and then you have, again, it's so heavily deregulated. I mean, to the point where when Dublin pot still was doing well, the same guy, William Ross, said, we need a distillery in Dublin. We need to get in on the pot still game. And he started Phoenix Park Distillery. Yeah. For some of these guys, it was strictly business.
I'm surprised. That's a funny one. I know that Teeling, I mean, we can talk about Teeling. They're part of the festival, which is great. So, I mean, we won't say anything negative. What's really positive about the Teeling thing is that Phoenix. And that's beautiful. But Phoenix Park Distillery, I'm surprised that no one has bothered their backhole to resurrect that because of even the name.
It's Phoenix.
It lends itself to a massive regeneration of that brand in Dublin. And Dublin's doing so well. But, Dublin Liberties Distillery.
Yeah.
Rowan Cole now.
Yeah.
The lads at Teeling.
Pierce Lyons.
Oh my, you can't forget Pierce Lyons. hear how quirky is Pierce Lyons.
Yeah, I mean, well, Connor was at this thesis event yesterday, as were Rowan. You know, they were all there, and yeah, Phoenix Park. I mean, there's a whole story. I mean, like James Joyce's father was the company secretary and like ran the place into the ground, drinking half the product. There's a lot of crack around Phoenix Park, you know, and even of course like the name,
a very big distillery.
Big by distillery standards, small by Dublin, just because there were so many, like you had Rowan Co. was enormous,
But
you know.
a big distillery.
But DCL backing it, so huge distribution.
Yeah.
But even even like Phoenix Park in Dublin,
It's
the name,
prime location.
the largest central park in Europe of any capital city. You know, an incredible hidden gem itself. You know, you have the River Liffey going up it. In fact, actually, the name Phoenix is a corruption of Fionishka. So you even have the Ishka of Ishkabaha in the bloody name. You know, it's Fionishka.
I think we should get a couple of quid
fair
together.
water.
We'll get a couple of quid together, just me and you. We'll find a little. We'll find like a little. You know, one of those wee vans you can just park on the Phoenix Park. We'll just put it there, and we'll put a wee still in, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? We'll just bastardize it. We'll just make it happen. Do you know what I mean? Look, we're going to have so much to talk to. You know, next couple of days we've got maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours here or there, whatever we have. I think it's just good that we can start to talk about some of this stuff because there's lots of things. I'm sure people out there will have questions for you. You are a very interesting fellow. You have just done something which is genuinely, for the enthusiast out there, really geeky, really funky, and it will drop a lot of questions. So people will have those questions for you. But I want to hopefully we focus on some of the aspects that I want to see, and I do want to see those direct links. And it's not that direct also Scotch link, but it is the link between the creation of brands that we have popping up, the boys just moving across the small piece of water, you know, so the Jimison lads, you know, we've got the Mitchells, you know, why are they doing that? Why just coming over and doing that? And why have some of the other ones really stood out and still managed to maintain course, and the rest of them have fallen away? Because we are in a situation, I think, that, you know, we still don't have a distillery in Belfast. And yet we had massive distilleries.
It's
in
amazing.
Belfast.
I mean, more whiskey made in Belfast than the rest of the country. You know. Now, of course, column stills are on a different scale, so the math is unfair because it's stacked.
But it's
still there.
It's literally stacked against everyone else. But who cares?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, who cares? I mean, there was a question. I think someone came in here, and it is a question which is relevant at this point, which is, what percent was the grain versus the malt at that point?
Well, malt whiskey, and I mean, this is the hard part of the thesis to break to a lot of people. For the last 2 centuries, malt whiskey made up never more than 5%.
Yes.